So across an aggregate of multiple hotels, like who's the winner? So it's really boxing match.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, and I wonder if you may, if it's close, are you going to have to look at the overall cost difference for a hotel? Because obviously, beyond demand, you get more from the brand. You get training, you get other abilities to hire easier because people are trained on specific sets. So if it is one of those things where it's neck and neck, one thing I may be interested in looking at is the overall human capital cost difference between the hotels to see if that clears it up. If that moves the soft brand ahead, or if it doesn't, because then you're fully measuring the value of the soft brand versus being fully independent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned Calibri, Holly. I think that this study will be, we don't see it as competition because we're just doing a one-time study, right? We're not doing a subscription. We're not trying to sell any software or anything like that. If anything, I think that it's something that will actually help people see the value of a solution like Calibri. They're giving you benchmarking on an ongoing basis to the content. So I know right now that's historical, and our study will also be historical, but what I see for the future is something like that being in something like a Demand 360 report where you can see into the future, how are things coming up, and how can you really strategize your optimal mix most profitable business.
I've done a little bit astounded that more people haven't embraced the Calibri. I mean, it's expensive, but I work with a group and I push them to get the reports and take a look at what their data is compared to their competitive set. And it's been insanely valuable, although sometimes they still don't listen to it, but whatever.
Well, but that's actually the point. We as we were moving in certain directions, we started asking a lot of our clients what they do with certain data that they have. And we were frustrated to hear that in a lot of cases, the reporting that they have, their answer was, we talk about it in meetings, or we don't do anything with it. And, so that's challenging. And I think it comes down to something I always give for advice when we talk about anything new, which is have a strategy for what you're hoping to accomplish out of anything that you're going to buy or do. Because without strategy, you're just spending money, and you're unlikely to maximize the opportunity.
Yeah, I think it goes back, Edward, to exactly what we were talking about right before Holly came on, too, about you have to spend money to make money. And, we were saying sales, marketing, revenue is so important, but you do make a good point that if it's just sitting there on the shelf, it's not doing anybody any good. I was actually talking with a potential client that has a portfolio of hotels, and she said to me, well, we have Demand 360, but we're probably going to cancel it out of next year's budget because nobody's using it. That's sad. That's so valuable for us. And I'm like, you got it. I feel like the solution maybe is get them to use it because you're saving a little bit of money, but there's so much information there that can help you win that it's really, I try very hard not to promote any one particular service, but to be honest, I don't think there's anything else like Demand 360, and I don't think there's anything else like Calibri. They're two different things, but both I think are so valuable to have that level of information.
But I think we need to be honest. We've all been around long enough. We've ridden through a couple of pullbacks in our hospitality careers. This phase that we've been in for a few years now is the fat and happy phase, where most people are looking over dozens, if not thousands of dollars to reach for the easy stuff, the big stuff, because it's been easy and it's been big. And there's a substantial switch that happens when all of a sudden you do have to tighten up, and you have to do everything you can to land the right business and to be active, to keep the business performing. And that's actually, as a vendor, those are the times I like the most. I mean, with Easy Yield, our biggest years of growth were after the financial crisis.
Yeah.
And it was because leading up to that point, we were having the conversation we were having with hotels is, I'm not looking at rate and inventory that aggressively.
Right.
I don't mind having 6 people to do it. And and then, financial crisis hits, carpet gets pulled out. Our phone's ringing off the hook from anyone we had talked to for the years leading up to that with, hey, do you guys still do that thing? And we need more of that. And it was the biggest 3 years of growth for the company. And it was, the conversation, the product was no different. The difference was the hotels became focused on efficiency, channel mix,
Right.
really understanding. One of the biggest things you got from Easy Yield was we could actually explain to you how your markups worked with an FBA. It always blew my mind how almost no hotel ever actually understood how markups worked and how much real money was being added on top of that net rate. So hopefully we should not, economic kind of standards say that we should not see a massive pullback. We should see an easing into a some type of contraction, and hopefully that easing gives this time hotels the chance to sharpen up, because right now is when you should be preparing to sharpen up, and should have always been doing it because profitability is good too, but more so than ever, that should be the focus now and going into next year is how are you going to sharpen? How are you going to become very effective at finding the best dollars and making sure you always bring them in, even if it's just far easier to get some of the bad dollars in.
Mr. Robert Cole, I don't know if you know Lily, Robert Cole.
Hi, how are you? I think I'm matching today with a headset.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed it earlier, but I mean, which tool were you really supporting? I mean, I know between Lauren and Holly and Ed, they certainly prefer Ouija boards, roulette wheels, or just
dartboards. Dartboards is my favorite.
Oh, dartboard. Lauren is upgraded to a dartboard. I apologize.
Flipping a coin.
I got my crystal ball out of you for today.
Oh.
Seance time. Yeah.
Always pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely.
I do have to apologize for my lackluster engagement, but I guess since we're now on LinkedIn officially, we're piping over. I'm getting a lot of, who are you? What are you? Because it's posting on EU and APAC.
We're actually watching now.
I'm over here going, hi, this is a live show. Because I got somebody from Milan, I got somebody Bali, just it's like, okay, yeah, we're doing, because it's on LinkedIn now, and again, because it's a business conversation, an industry conversation, it is engaging for these people to pop up with it now. It's not just, oh, hey, there's something live watching. It's like they're actually asking like legitimate questions, like explain more of this. I'm like, so please. So no more easy stuff. It's like, holy jeez, they're actually asking hard questions. But anyway, no, please go right ahead.
So Lily, what other tools do you use? I'm always interested in tools. I mean, there's so much data available that picking the right stuff is kind of critical.
It is, and it really also, I just saw another post, I think it was this morning on LinkedIn. What is the best PMS for an independent hotel? Well,
none.
It depends. Yes, none. And if you have to pick from what's out there, a lot of people are looking for, this is number one. Well, it depends on your market. It depends on your revenue strategy. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It depends if you need it to be front desk friendly or data heavy, or there's so many different components.
It even depends on what other technologies you have in your stack.
Right.
Because that may eliminate half the field.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, make the wrong technology choices on these big buys because they only think of the first 5 questions to ask. So we try to get ahead of that with our clients when they're looking for new technology. We'll go through the full RFP process with them, and we come up with our own RFP that's really extensive and focuses on what they really need to be focused on, whether they know it or not at the time. We know the right questions to ask them in hotelier language, and then how to translate those into technology language. But to go back to Holly's question, one of the things that I think is really essential for any particularly full service hotel in today's environment is some type of a BI tool. So the three that we kind of come up against, or not against because we all sell software, the three that we use the most with our clients are OTA's Revenue Insight, which is a little bit limited in the number of PMS versions that it can support. It's mostly focused in Opera, but it's a really quick integration and easy to use, and no lag time to pull a case report, which is nice. You can also get paced by room type, by rate plan, by market segment. There's all sorts of things you can do with that one, which makes it nice and friendly and easy to use. Another one is Focal Revenue. So that is Mike Metzger's tool that he's put together. He came from a revenue management background, not a tech background. So that makes it really helpful and also integrates with more systems than OTAs does. And then, of course, RevIntel is kind of the big system, the big whale out there, provided by Rainmaker. And that integrates with a very, very wide variety of systems and has a lot of tech money backing it. So the most important thing, of course, with the BI tools is you have to have clean data because the tool is only going to do you as much good as your data. So having a data cleanliness program in your hotel is something that I've written and spoken about a couple of different times, making sure that the data that's going in is actually accurate. So those are some of my favorites. And then, of course, you've got your typical PMS, CRS, RMS.
Question, do you think choosing a PMS system first or a BI tool first what sequence do you recommend?
I recommend choosing the PMS first because it operates your entire hotel. There's so many key features in there that have to be looked at, like the way that you want to run your housekeeping department, the way you want to run your front desk. So it's not just a revenue management focus. And that's, I think, what our service kind of brings to the table, people from operations, people from revenue, people from sales. So we're understanding the priorities in all of those different areas. Most of our revenue managers honestly came up through the operation. So we know some of those pain points, whether it comes from housekeeping or front desk, that are important to the operation, because if you have an operations only person looking at it, you're going to miss out on revenue things that you need a reporting. If you have a revenue only person looking at it, you're going to miss out on that operational component that allows you to run your hotel efficiently. So you've really got to look at both of those. And because of that, I feel like selecting the PMS is the most important kind of key piece, and you build everything else off of that. There's enough BI tools out there to work with different systems that you can kind of select from there.
And one thing to the question of PMS, because I get asked this a lot, and my suggestion always, I mean, first of all, if you're a net new hotel, congratulations. You get to pick a PMS without any real heartache. However, most hotels are actually talking about switching PMS.
Mm-hmm.
The very first exercise that you should do is every department that interfaces with any aspect of the property management system today, you should have them list for you the problems and the special benefits they get out of their use of the property management system, and get them to attempt to weight how much that impacts their day, whether it's by minutes, hours, what have you. The reason for this is, first, the very first thing you're going to do with that list is go back to your existing vendor and say, here's all the problems we have with your technology. More often than not, anyone that I've given this advice to, when they go to their vendor with that, they magically find out that that was actually taken care of in release XYZ that you haven't done. And you can upgrade to that release, and magically all of those are now eliminated in your decisions. The next thing you can ask is, what can they do for the stuff that hasn't been addressed? Is there the ability to pay for custom development, things like that? And the reason I say this is a PMS always costs more to implement than you are quoted and you anticipate. And the loss of business during the time that you figure that out is also very large. So, unless your PMS is crumbling, which some of them are, I know quite a few PMSs that hit their daily database limits, and that causes res to go offline and things like that. Those you have to move. That's an emergency situation. But if your PMS is more of the common situation, which is, you constantly hear from your team that they dislike it, you need to understand in real terms what it is they dislike and what the actual business impact is. Because that will also tell you how big of a problem is it and how much is it worth spending to solve that problem.
Right. Absolutely.
Two things. One is, as a follow-up question earlier from the PMS point of view, who plugs all this stuff in together? Is it the PMS people? Is it you? And second, Edward, great advice. Thank you. Going to talk to vendor now.
I'm done.
Boom! Mic drop. By the way, to the other one, who meshes this together? Do they rely on the PMS services? Who plugs the APIs and all this stuff together?
Please, whatever you do not rely on any one technology provider to assume that they know how they work with other technology providers. You've got to have an expert who understands how the interfaces work, or else you're going to have issues. You're going to lose money from day one when you go live and nothing's working. And you're not available online. This happens.
And you're going to spend a lot of time defining because you may be told that the way they're doing it is the way you asked, but you will quickly find out that the way you asked left a lot of room for defining what the is.
You need a translator, essentially. Somebody who knows the PMS you're selecting, the CRS you're using, the RMS you're using. They have to know all those technologies and how they interface, and that person should be the person project managing the entire thing from start to finish. The selection process is where it starts. That person has to be involved in the selection process, because the last thing you want to do is wait 3 days from go live and realize half of your functions don't interface, and now you're in a manual environment. And it's happened. We've seen it happen before, and it is painful. So it still happens because
I did this 20 years ago, and I'm having horrible memories. I can't believe it's still the case.
It still happens, and where it comes down to is, I feel like a broken record on today's call, because they don't want to spend the money to bring in an expert who knows how to select the best system. And so they make a $30,000 investment and realize 2 weeks later, when they can't get their money back, that it wasn't the right system for them, or that it's not going to work properly for them, or they can't do 15 things that they were already doing in their old system. So really hiring an expert, and sure, we provide this service, but hire anyone who does this well, who has good reviews, who has success stories. It doesn't have to be us, although obviously we would love your business, but, just spend the money, get somebody who knows what they're doing in there to manage the entire process for you, because it is going to save you months of heartache.
And also understand that moving to a new core platform means you are going to change almost all of your standard operating procedures. You're not, the biggest mistake I watch people make who buy complex software is they want the software to work the way they've done things, where that is actually the wrong way to use software. The correct way to use software is to understand that for whatever function it is, what is the best way to approach having your team use it. Not make the software work the way your team works, because you have to remember your team currently works the way they do because of the software they've been using.
Exactly.
And it's a lot like tipping the first domino, right? You knock over that first one, and all of a sudden it starts running out. Another way that I've used in the past has really been to go and look at, first there needs to be an inventory of all of your interfaces, and even that, Holly, is a major obstacle for a lot of groups, because they don't really know, what's connected. Sometimes they're little, weird black boxes that were, who knows how long ago something was kludged together. And, Ed mentioned, custom development. Yeah, if somebody did something custom that worked really well, but is the guy who developed it still there? Nobody knows how it works. So all of a sudden, and then actually going around to all of those various groups and finding out, well, who are they working with? So you talk to your point of sale group or revenue manager. Hey, who's doing really great stuff? Who's a great partner that you're really having great interfaces with? And it winds up being kind of a network approach to try to figure out, okay, well, if I move this part, I only break 2 things instead of 6. But I don't get this other thing that I really need. And between the operational processes, your reporting, what the management company needs to bring, all these other factors, there may be constraints on not getting to the best, maybe quote, the best solution for you. So,
and this is where, you have to understand, especially in core systems, and it's not just the property management system industry. I mean, if any of you have ever walked a large trustee through changing an ERP, all you're doing is you're trading the things you dislike today for different things you'll dislike tomorrow. And if that trade equals overall better business, then it's a good trade. If it doesn't, if it's neutral or worse, it can really cripple your organization moving forward and become very problematic. So this is an area when you're talking about core elements of your technology stack, it is absolutely worth spending the money, and especially on someone who has done the specific move you're looking to move. So someone who has expertise in the technologies you have today and have moved other customers through the process of moving to the specific technologies you're looking to move to.
Right.
Yeah, there's an old adage: never be the first, never be the biggest. It might work out for you, but boy, the odds are stacked against you.
From perspective of future, looking in the future tense of things and business models and so forth, do you see a trend if we do feel this downward turn, whether it be fast or slow? Do you feel that businesses are better suited to bring in more full-time teams to mitigate their revenue management ideologies, or do you feel like you are in the cat seat where it comes to I can come, I can fix, I can do what you need to do, put you on the right path, and then I don't have to be around the whole time? Is that, which model do you think is going to be more prudent or usable? I guess I don't know. In the sense of what do you see the future in that sense?
I guess it depends if their revenue management teams are currently efficient, right? So if you're just adding more bodies because it seems like you can get more done, it may be an efficiency problem within the team. Honestly, I think that an assessment is the way to go because it'll cost maybe 10% of 1 month of revenue. Let's just put it in perspective, right? If I give you the dollar amount, it sounds expensive. But if it's less than 10% of 1 month's revenue to set you on the right path for a year, doesn't that make more sense than hiring somebody full time? Because these days, a decent revenue manager is commanding upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 in some markets like New York City and San Francisco, even more. So that's great if you bring on a great professional, and you should have a great professional on your team, whether they're a full-time employee or a service like ours. Either way, you just have to make sure that the quality level is there and not see revenue management as an area where you cut costs. It is where you want to look for efficiency, though, and results. If your revenue manager can't describe to you the whys behind what's happening in your market, or at least know where to look for the answers, you're probably working with the wrong revenue manager, whether that's a consultant, whether that's a property person, it doesn't really matter. If they can't give you a solid reason backed up by data, you're going to be in trouble when the recession hits.
Well, and you need to internalize that information so you learn as an organization, because
Absolutely.
Again, if it's an external consultant, that person gets hit by a bus. Hey, how does all this stuff work? And they produce really good, but all of a sudden you've got nothing, and you're lost. Or even you start working with some larger firms, and the person who's your account manager, who's really working with you closely, who's great. hey, they just got promoted and they aren't that person anymore. And you know what? Because your property was so good, they're going to put some junior person in who's going to learn, and it's going to be a great experience for that. That may not be a great experience for you as a customer. So,
Right,
yeah, you've got to
absolutely.
learn the stuff. You've got to absorb why this is happening because it's your asset. It's
Yes.
your business. It's your, just outsourcing your pricing and revenue strategies is probably not a successful plan that any successful business has ever adopted.
As it said in one of my favorite books, Fanatical Prospecting, if you've never listened to it and you run any sales teams, you should listen. You are the CEO of you. So you are ultimately responsible for your results. You've got to be exactly what Robert is saying, even if you're working with us, right? Like, I like to think my company is great, but you ultimately are responsible for what happens and how you involve yourself with that consulting firm or vendor or tech vendor, or really it comes across with anything. At the end of the day, it's your asset. Nobody's going to care about your asset exactly the same way that you do. So it is really important that you have that involvement. And also, if you are working with a vendor or consulting firm, know what your backup plan is in case your consultant does get hit by a bus. For us, we build that in because we always have a 3-tier system. We've got an analyst, a strategy lead, and a project manager assigned to every client so that if somebody is, even if they're out sick for a day, there's somebody else who has access to the data and knows what's going on for your hotel and your strategy that can quickly jump in and take care of things for you.
The gentleman from Morocco would like to know, who do you talk to most, the GMs or the ownership? And how does this process, I think your first mention was they don't have a person that does this. So if they had someone that does this, who do they talk to most? Do they talk to the GM or do they talk to the owners when it comes to these types of things?
Well, ideally, you want to have a revenue team. So whether or not you talk often with the owners is often at the discretion of the ownership itself and how involved they want to be. Some are on every weekly strategy meeting, and some really just want a quarterly report, and others just want to throw some money into the hotel and don't want to know what goes on behind the scenes. That's getting to be less and less these days, though. But usually you want to have a strategy team. So that should definitely be your GM. That's typically the direct report for the revenue manager. The director of sales should be involved. The marketing person should be involved if there is one, or any type of marketing service that you're employing. Front office manager is a plus because they bring that operational kind of perspective to everything if you can get them involved. And that's really going to be kind of your core team. Director of finance is also a plus because they can comment on kind of the profitability bottom line for the strategies that you're discussing, and working as a team, collaborating on what those strategies are going to be so everybody's on the same page and rolling things out in the same way.
How far ahead should you look?
12 months. We look at 12 months every single day. We don't necessarily go day by day, but we at least look at any major spikes in pickup or any major changes in market rates, because that may be an indicator of an event or some sort of demand generator that you weren't previously aware of. And when you're looking 12 months out, you have the opportunity to capitalize on that right away. And of course, with your pace, you should look 12 months out because then you see in advance if things are falling behind as well. That may be less on a day-to-day basis, but that's going to alert you to any upcoming issues in your strategy.
Not that this is any indication that we want to stop the conversation, but for our Instagram feed, it lasts only an hour. So I want to make sure that we get into correct content information of how people can reach you and so forth. And then we can continue the conversation after that. But at least that will give us a stop point for the Instagram feed. So how is it they can find you and anything you want to tell us to what it is that you do service structure-wise or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of reiterate for those who may have joined us a little bit late, we are a full-service revenue management consulting firm. We focus on task force to fill vacant positions, outsourcing revenue management on a long-term basis with a professional you might not have been able to afford on a full-time basis. And most importantly, our consulting services, the strategic assessment we've talked about ad nauseum here, our system audits. If your technology systems or interfaces aren't working, we can jump in and clean those up and solve that for you. System selection, we've talked a little bit about. That's another service that we offer as well. And everything that we do is customized to the needs of each of our clients. So if you let us know a little bit about your goals and pain points, we can customize any program related to revenue management for you. So you can reach us by going to www.tcrmservices.com. That's our website. You can read a little bit more about what we do there in our services. You can also see some of the articles and thought pieces that we've published if you want to read a little bit more about these topics. And you can also reach us for any additional information at info@tcrmservices.com.
Outstanding. Like I said, we don't have to stop by any means. I just want to make sure we had a stopping point that I can make the Instagram TV.
Absolutely.
And remember, in 20 more minutes, he will do another.
I will be doing another.
And then 30 minutes after that.
and remember how we said that all these interrelated systems had to work so smoothly, and you needed an expert who knew how all this stuff worked, and if somebody, if they got hit by a bus, well, if Lauren got hit by a bus,
no one would use webinar Sam.
Well, that helps us with Instagram TV, IGTV, and then later on we're going to have to do the LinkedIn sign out, and then we're all good. But they all have their time limits on different things. I don't want to make sure we didn't miss the contact information from it. Also, I apologize for the interruption on that. We are still, however, on LinkedIn. And very interesting that people are up on these times. I mean, if you look at Sydney time, it is 3:30 in the morning that this is being broadcast with them, and in 6 hours plus so it's 6:30 Friday in London time in Morocco, and that's +1 for Morocco, so it's even 7:30. So nice that people are engaged in the conversations for those times by any stretch. 3:30 in the morning, though, I am really bizarre as to why they're up watching a live LinkedIn, but that's just me.
The bars were just closed in Sydney. You have to look at the other alternatives for entertainment.
Yeah, it might be.
Insomnia is a real problem in our society that not enough people talk about.
I would think being in Bali, though, I think in Bali you would have probably a restful, paradise, I don't know, but...
We are the #1 cure for insomnia.
Honestly, it's near and dear to my heart, your business strategy of stepping in and helping people, bringing in very high quality resources that they couldn't afford themselves. Face it, like you pointed out with revenue manager, you get a good revenue manager, you're 6 figures. If you really get somebody good and knows the market well and is really going to make money for you. Not everybody can afford that. And then also you can just, convince people that they should be even afford it. So coming in and be able to at least put them onto the path, fix what is broken, and connect the dots with them. And of course, come in and talk about the integrations necessary between the disciplines of marketing, sales, and revenue management, where they're talking about the same data and using it. Holly, thanks for being with it. From a sales perspective, that seems to be a missing component a lot of times, is that dialogue.
I did have a question on that. So one of the big things I think about when you are reducing the silos within organizations, I heard you talking about marketing and revenue management. Sales often gets a little bit excluded. And an approach that I always take is you have to align the various department goals. And so from a revenue management goal, I am a little bit amazed, again, going back 20 years, at the conflict that still perpetually arises between revenue management and sales. And so to alleviate that and to get them working on the same page, what do you recommend? What goals can you align to get them both focusing on the same revenue growth?
Well, first of all, your incentive plan for your salespeople, that's where a lot of this tends to start. If they're incentivized based on their personal bookings only and not the overall performance of the hotel, like from a RevPAR perspective, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to hear, no, we're not going to take this group that would put you over your goal for the quarter because it's not in the best interest of the hotel and we can make more money in transient.
Yes, I'm sorry.
What does that mean for my pocketbook?
I don't want to hear what's wrong with sales. I want to hear
Goals may not
Thank you.
Annually.
Actually, I'm of course kidding. However, when you said that, my immediate response was, you know what though? Salespeople need to be bonused on personal because that's how we're driven. But go ahead. I understand your point.
It has to be weighted between multiple things. Yes, there's absolutely a personal goal still in there. There's a team goal in there. There's a hotel goal in there. So there's got to be a balance, I think, in that incentive program because, I mean, we don't want to be in the position of big bad revenue manager, right? Like, we're not out to get Sally Hansen on her goal, and make sure that they can't feed her children. Like, that's not why we're here. We're just here to make sure that the hotel is doing well so that we all have jobs later because the owners are happy with our performance. So I think that one thing that revenue managers, though, can also do better is, and we talk about this a lot when it comes to the DBR process, is revenue managers might start to focus on profitability, which is good, and this is a big piece of it, where they'll say, what's your net rate of your group business? Give me, what you're actually quoting, minus the commissions, minus the margins, plus the ancillary spend, like minus the rebates. But are they doing the same thing in transient? Probably not. They're probably comparing it against VAR or ADR, one of those two things. So what they really need to be looking at is their average transient net rate after commissions, after booking fees and all of that, and that is seldom being done. So that's, I think, where sales can push back a little bit and say, okay, you're saying my net rate's too low, but we're off by about $20. Are you sure that you've looked at the cost of acquisition for the transient that you think is going to fill this void instead, and the relationship piece that comes along with that piece of proof?
Yes, thank you.
See, I can be in my silo
Totally. Oh,
You mean
exactly.
just purely pushing book direct isn't the right way to do it? Huh. Who would have thought?
Oh my gosh, you
I
don't
wonder
get
if
me
they talked
started.
about that at that conference this week.
The
Yeah.
book conference? Yeah, maybe. So, but yeah, don't get me started on how hospitality is just a bunch of bandwagons that we all jump on from time to time.
No, please do. We're ready to hop on a wagon.
It's bandwagons, but do you ever, like the demolition derby where the cars are running in the figure 8 pattern and crossing? It's a little bit more like that.
It's true. No, it is.
And
It is very
by
true.
the way, for everyone listening, that point of your direct channel may be costing more than your OTA, like that happens quite a few times a year.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to, make that happen as few times a year as possible. And
Manage it.
identify the time of year that your OTA business can drive a more effective demand on a lower cost than your direct channel, and adjust your marketing to not overspend on those times, and you'll make even more money.
Yeah.
And you'll drop the cost of your direct channel.
And that's what the OTAs are doing with their bidding strategies across metasearch, across their display, across everything, is they're looking at where the opportunities are. So they aren't throwing a bunch of good money after bad opportunities.
So I think something funny. That wasn't her only point about direct booking.
Right.
It was an
Yeah.
earlier point she made that we
Okay.
didn't, because it was in the middle of talking through a very large thing. I didn't want to go, hey, stop what's important to you when you said something. I didn't say something about it. She's too new to do that.
but
I think also, like, I'm just going to call out almost every hospitality operator here for a moment on your point, Edward. So a little while ago, I was talking about a client who said that they may stop using Demand 360 because their team wasn't using it, so they were going to cut it out of the budget. And my suggestion was maybe your team should start using it. But really, that's what it comes down to as well when we're looking at things like OTAs, right? Because everybody says, okay, the OTA can be your billboard, it's going to bring guests to you, and you can convert them. And I hear so often, yeah, but my front desk doesn't do a good job of that. Then make them do a good job of it. That's your job as a hospitality owner, is to get your people to perform or kick them out.
Mhm.
Like, you've got to get these people on board. The solution is not oh, my team isn't performing, so I'm going to spend more money on something else or less money on something that could be making me more money. The answer is have the tough conversations, take the time to do the training, and make it work for you. OTAs are not this devil. They're like a distribution channel. I mean, that's exactly what they're called, right? And saying that you want everybody to book direct is like the farmer saying they're not going to sell their produce at Walmart. They want everybody to travel to their farm to get it. It is not going to happen with the majority of your customers. It's just not.
But they don't want their process because maybe they're booking air or something first, and it's right there, and they're saying, "Oh, I can save $200 on my hotel stay or whatever if I book it as a bundle." Whatever is happening in terms of that process, And what's the alternative? Well, they aren't really bold, or maybe they're a member of the Hilton program, the Marriott program, the Hyatt program, all the way down the list. So they have to go to each of those sites independently because metasearch doesn't work. Right? They don't have the best rates, and that's a gruesome process for them. So they do what's easiest and in their best interest. They can say
it's about balance because you can't also give up on your direct channel because then you will get
absolutely.
So the OTAs aren't evil; they will push as far as you allow them to push. So if you aggressively are pushed up against them, they're not going to gain much traction on you. The only way you can push up aggressively against them come negotiation time is to have viable other sources of business. So it's about channel mix. You need your direct channel to be healthy, to be a good representative of your business. And I say that because that's not about style. It's about serving the purpose that it exists. So, if your site has the new thing is, everyone's gone nuts with these giant hero videos that take forever to load because they haven't implemented them correctly.
Right.
So, that's an example of, style over, purpose. Your direct channel should be healthy. It should have the same advantages that if someone finds you on your direct channel, when they go to Expedia, you're not cheaper on Expedia. It should all be about balance, and no one channel's the devil. Your direct channel's not the devil. That may come because we are a bandwagon industry, like you said. Someone may win the war to get the chance of direct channels garbage.
Obviously, the OTA discussion has spurred some questions. We answered two of them, which was, what is, how do you combat or work with the mix of OTA? But there's one that is more specific, saying, what do you consider to be proper mix? How much OTA, how much direct? What is in your mind the percentages that should be comparable?
It's heavily dependent on time of year, your market.
Agreed. I mean, I know it's a general question, but it's.
No, but that's not there is no answer to that everyone who watches this.
What's a healthy percentage of OTA?
But there may be a particular hotel where honestly, and Lily mentioned it earlier, when you start considering the whole load of franchise fees and everything, and kudos for drilling through that, it may be, and there have been, small independent hotels in New York who just decide, you know what, we're going 100% OTA, these guys can fill us, we're going to work with them, and let's go. We're just going to cash the checks. Now, that may not be the best.
Not a good long-term strategy.
Probably not a great luck. But again, for that owner of that building who may be able to say, here's what I'm doing, and you know what? It's going to be sold within the next 36 months anyway. Here we go.
Probably the person was asking Lily, since this is what she
was saying. That's okay. We're all here. Lily, what do you think?
Well, everybody has to know how much demand there is for each channel in your market. To Edward's point, I mean, he's absolutely correct. You have to know how your market behaves. Some are going to be more heavily OTA versus others. Also, your brand or your style of hotel, and by brand here, I mean not specifically Marriott, Hilton, etc., but in conjunction, being independent is its own brand in a way. So from other similar hotels within your market, what is their demand level of OTA and direct? Because you can only capitalize on as much business as there is in the market, right? If there's only 500 rooms of people who are booking direct in your market, sorry, I have a fly in my office for some reason. If there's only 500 direct bookers, you're not necessarily going to increase the number of direct bookers unless you have a really solid marketing strategy. So you have to work with the demand that's there and just capture as much of that share as possible. But setting a 5,000 direct booking strategy in a market that only has 500 is not going to work for you. You can't just make every customer change their behavior. So that's number one. And number two is, who's your target demographic and how do you reach them?
I actually have a question. Sorry, guys. Do you, when you look at your budgeting, because we're in the budget process still, regardless, it's October, we have the season. Do you look at your historical contribution percentages as a point of truth, or do you try to challenge those contributions in your future budget forecasting, saying, you know what, I know OTA is very heavy for us at this time, but business cycle wise, that's our season, so they step into the market, they dominate it, so we just really, we'll shift over to them because they're driving the business for us. It's too expensive for us to try to move that off, or do you say, let's try this, let's see if we can shift this? Do you challenge the future, or do you just rely on the historical channel segmentation? Is kind of like that's the way it is?
Well, if you're ever working with a revenue manager who doesn't challenge the future, switch now. But first of all, you want to look in at your future demand. And again, I go market first, not property. So if you're making all of your decisions on your hotel's historical data or your hotel's future data, you're probably leaving money on the table somewhere. You have to know. It is. You really got to know. And it could be based on you doing a really crappy job or you doing a really excellent job, and either one can lead you to inaccurate assumptions. And that's one of the biggest problems I see today is so many hoteliers making assumptions on bad data. And it turns out when you do that, your results aren't going to work out, because if you think you're competing against the Courtyard, and in reality you're competing against the Ritz-Carlton, then you've got a problem. You're going to be making assumptions based on competing against the Courtyard that aren't going to follow through in your strategy. Everything's going to fall flat, and you're back to square one, if not square negative 50. So you've really got to be clear on what's going on in your market. Historical is a piece of that, but you also have to look at kind of your pace and your multiplier to see where it's going, because I'm finding that the pace of the way that the markets are changing, the way that people travel is changing, is so fast that historical data from a year ago may be wholly inaccurate to what's happening with the market right now.
So the key is to have good data, number one, before you start making any of these crazy changes and things like that. Because without that, you'll make maybe, well, they aren't well-informed decisions, but you've gone through some sort of process which has produced a decision, and you may be answering completely the wrong question because you don't have the right data to provide it for us. So.
To take advantage of the unique fact that we have Holly with us in addition, and not that you are just only in sales, but the sales is your focus at this time, and that we have Lily, who is revenue. This is as you said, this is a unique opportunity to show, to talk about the collaboration of what you would like, both of you, from your perspectives, to see in the integration. Because to your point, Holly, and it is a dormant conversation, sales usually gets invited last, if at all, into the conversations. And yet, by the same token, as you pointed out, Lily, it's a very integrated part as to what the value proposition, the balance of resources and revenue potentials are. So great advice point, because some of the thing pops up is the talking about sales and revenue management is how can we what kind of dialogue can we have with both of you here? It makes it kind of interesting we can do that.
And the lead time of the segment is also critical.
Yeah.
So I do have a question that's a little bit targeted. This is, I think, sort of funny. I am certainly in the sales world and very much in the e-commerce marketing world. Not at all in the revenue management world, honestly, because I'm a salesperson and I immediately don't like revenue management, which I know is ridiculous.
She doesn't like accounting, neither legal.
But my question for you, so I'm embarrassed that I don't know the answer to this. Revenue managers, first of all, are they incentivized? And if they are or not, how? But if they're not incentivized, how are they measured? How do you know you have a revenue manager who does a good job?
Excellent question.
That is a good question.
Thank you, Robert.
I'm so relieved, Holly, because when you said you were embarrassed, you didn't know it. I thought you were going to ask what RevPAR was, and I was really worried. So,
This is ADR thing.
ADR. No, that's a great question actually, and it varies a lot by different companies and kind of the approach that they take. I will say that most companies are bonusing revenue managers now, but there's not a lot of consistency. Yeah, there's not a lot of consistency on what they bonus on, but I can tell you a couple of key factors that are often in there, which are RevPAR index performance and growth. Forecasting accuracy. So when you forecast for the upcoming 30 days, are you within plus or minus 3% is usually the goal. Some do 5%, but somewhere in there. And the overall revenue performance of the hotel from a dollars perspective are probably the top three that we see.
So that's what they are. What should they be? The revenue index change, I would imagine, would always make sense. The overall revenue, to your point, should maybe be tweaked to profitability.
Yes, exactly.
And that would be a big
Channel.
I would pretty much like the answer's always C, or in my case, profitability. Like pretty much every answer to every question on here, I can just say profitability, and you pretty much get my opinion on it. But I think that that's so important. People just aren't taking the time to dig into those metrics the way that they should, which is where we're hoping that our study will help people. Like, let me at least do it for you one time so you can see that it can be done. Now you know where to find your reports. Now you know how to move your property forward. But it is true that revenue managers are very time poor. So I digress. But when it comes to what you're bonus on, I think they're not far off. These metrics still make sense, I think, for revenue managers. The beauty of using index as a portion of the bonus is that in the case of a recession, which frankly is not the revenue manager's fault, you're still bonusing them on capturing share, not on whether or not the hotel is losing money year over year. Because guess what? You are going to lose money year over year. And there's not much that a revenue manager can do about that other than control how much money you lose in comparison to your competitive set.
Thank you.
Oh, and Holly, because
I
you've
agree.
never been in revenue management, she's holding back. There's a special bonus that all revenue managers get for denying group sales.
Oh yeah. There's the secret. I didn't have to give it to sales people.
There's a similar one for papers too, to make
Oh yeah, food and beverage denials. Yeah.
But I can neither confirm nor deny.
So what I think is really funny is, I mean, and this is astounding to me. Why is this the case? What you're saying, and I completely agree. If we could align sales, marketing, and revenue managers' measurements with hotel profitability,
Yeah,
we're all on the same page,
right.
and the owners win. Why are we just getting around to that now? I mean, why are we?
data.
It's not
Please
talking
do
to
that.
What's the
other.
meaning of life, Holly? What's the meaning of life?
Well, Holly, why did it take us so long to figure out that in hotels we might want to have a comfortable bed?
They figured that out? Like, industry-wide?
Again, yeah, Lily just,
I mean, Starwood figured that out.
Right.
no, but it's funny, and the industry forgot about it. I mean, Starwood figured that out in, 2003? Maybe? Something like that. But yeah, the work I've done with J.D. Power, one of the things that they came up with was quality of sleep. Did you have a better quality of sleep than you expected, right?
Right.
And it's horrible, which should be kind of the whole objective of staying in the hotel. Did you sleep well? Should be kind of the outcome everyone's
But you
looking
gave that less weight than lobby, right?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, and we figured out the best way is really to have a picture of an empty lobby with no humans, normally at night, dramatically lit. That's really the best way to attract that.
Oh yeah, best picture ever. Oh no, Porte-Cochere.
The Porte-Cochere really, I mean, is the all-time winner.
My favorite is the one property that had a picture of the corner of the ceiling.
Oh, oops, little cropping error, or
Well, no.
No, just like it was almost almost like they accidentally took the photo and then made it their main photo on the OTA. I don't even know what happened there. It was not one of our hotels.
Good stuff.
But that was interesting. I didn't even know what to make of that one. I tried to repose it like 5 times.
There's a
I
niche
figured it out
market.
on my end.
Maybe somebody
Holly,
likes it.
one other thing, since we rarely get you, I would like to point out how you're wrong.
Roll the sleeves again.
You made a comment
That's right.
that you feel like that you're not good or you're uncomfortable with revenue management. However, in the same sentence, you said that you are proficient in e-commerce. It's the same part of the brain. Revenue management and e-commerce are data-driven sciences.
Absolutely.
So you actually would probably find that if you moved your day into the shoes of a revenue manager, you would find that you would lean on a lot of what you have developed in your e-commerce expertise.
Absolutely. I mean, I love data. I know a little bit weird for a salesperson. You know that I do. I just really have not. I've been busy, and so I've been focusing on the other 2 areas, and I just don't pay as much attention. I go to Rock every year. I go to the things. I listen, but my issue always with revenue management. I'd be curious, Lily, to hear your read on this. My point has always been revenue management does not generate demand. They manage demand, but they don't generate demand. Would you agree?
In many cases, yes. So we may generate demand in a way of speaking by pricing appropriately, but it's really more that we're generating shifted share, not necessarily like true demand. We're just pulling share, right? So here's what I really think. Like we talked about breaking down the silos and working together. We've talked about it, and still having trouble getting people to do it. But when people want to know what is the future of revenue management, I say it's that we're not going to have a revenue management department, we're not going to have a sales department, and we're not going to have a marketing department. We're going to have a chief strategist, a chief analytics person, and those 2 will oversee all 3. So your analytics person is your data nerd. They're managing all your dashboards and making sure the strategist has accurate data. The strategist is focused on a holistic view, and they understand marketing strategy. They understand sales strategy, and they understand revenue strategy, which sadly, there are not very many true strategists left out there. There's just people who kind of, throw the spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks. Is it done yet? And then, marketing might be your creative person that's going to design a pretty flyer, right? So, or a gorgeous website. And you've got to have that mind kind of over here supporting the strategist and analyst. But honestly, I think that that's the wave of the future.
I 100% agree.
You need quality salespeople who can go nurture relationships. And yes, you need to be able to do that digitally, but you also probably need to have someone who's doing that very effectively.
Well, and you have to understand that it's even between marketing and sales, it's 2 very different goals. And you're speaking at 2 very different levels. Marketing is sell the why, the vision, the big, and sales is help through the small. Help through the detail and, really make them feel comfortable. And that's where the relationship side comes in. And, I would say on your next row down, I agree with you on the top people who oversee it. The next row down, your sales is going to be more of your relationship interface, and your marketing is going to be your creative. So it'll be a creative manager or a creative associate. Your sales will be more of your interface to the world. It's because you don't need, in your architecture, you don't need what currently is defined as a salesperson in that architecture. Because today, and here's the problem on why silos exist, Holly. Revenue management started at a different time than sales did, and the current form of marketing started at a different time than either of the 2. So a salesperson who came up and has been trained by salespeople who existed before revenue management, before marketing was an active digital landscape, the salesperson had those skill sets as part of their overarching skill. Those people trained their people, and that the definition of what a salesperson thinks their role should be doesn't fit what that new structure is. That does not mean a salesperson can't take and reflect on the fact that you actually do make revenue type decisions daily. You are using data. You're just not paying attention to the fact that you're taking that input and that inputted data and you're making decisions on it. You have the ability to be a strategist. You have the ability to be an analyst. And so this is where some of that friction has come up is a salesperson didn't get redefined when a revenue manager started. And neither got redefined when, digital
Marketing, yeah.
came in and has capabilities that overlap for both. And because of that, you have people who possess a lot of the same capabilities put in these silos so that they don't butt heads and ask the hard questions and derail things. And it just grows further and further apart. As you go to bring it together, people's skill sets need to change to make that work.
Exactly.
And it can work, and it does not mean any is more or less valuable. They're actually all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Oddly enough. With Ed.
Wow. What day is this? October 25th. We're going to chisel this in a stone tablet somewhere.
What it is Lauren told me people are actually watching now, so I can't just joke around.
That's it.
Speaking of which,
Just think of just an example there though. Think of next year they're going to have the Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee in July, which is a pretty strong demand period for that. I mean, their hotels there are going to be having, well, they've already made decisions when, prior to the destination being announced. Were they going to take a huge block from the DNC? Were they going to try to make that as small as possible because they know the demand, they're going to pull all that in as leisure? I mean, who knows? A lot of these guys may have come to us and go, oh yeah, we'll do that. What do you want? Yeah, sure. Oh, you want all the rooms? Okay. And all of a sudden that kills their profitability for it, right? So, those decisions have always been, a major factor of how these, especially when it has a long lead time, you're setting that base of business. All of a sudden that could cripple the hotel if that data isn't being handled. But again, in sales, you have sales analysts and everything who are doing that. They're trying to meet their budget. They have revenue goals. They're trying to do it. The problem is you don't have that pitted against the other channel. And as Lily said, you've got to look at all this channel profitability and then the whole net of what's happening with management fees and overrides and incentives and things like that. You've got to look at it holistically. Or you can't be optimized.
with that in mind, we are at the top of the hour, and I do want to make sure as we conclude with the LinkedIn feed line that we go over and get Lily's information back out again, so we can wrap that as a key point for it. And then we want to get Lily. Like I told you, in a blink of an eye, a half hour turns into an hour turns into an hour. It just.
It's like this half hour.
So much fun. I can do this all day.
That's why we end up doing this. This is our therapy every Friday. It's like, we're just going to get it done. Yeah.
I apologize to the listeners.
Yeah. So Lily, if people want to know more about what it is that you do in your company that you built and so forth, what is it that you do and where is it that you can find you?
Sure, I'm the CEO of Total Customized Revenue Management, also known as TCRM, and you can find us at www.tcrmservices.com. We do task force, outsourced revenue management, and key consulting services such as strategic assessments to set you on the right path for the next year, system audits to make sure that your systems and technology are working properly and are set up cleanly, and also technology selection processes for those who are looking for new PMS, CRS, RMS, or BI tools that are going to be a great investment for you in the long term.
And
so
how
you can find out more about our services online and also the articles and whatnot that we've produced on different subjects.
And Holly, somebody says, who's Holly? I'm serious. So, Holly, would you be so kind? Well, while we're asking, Holly, what is it that you do?
I own a sales training company called Influencer Sales. And I have spent the last couple of years working on the CHDM with HSMAI, hence my involvement with this group. I think that's probably how I came to be with you people, because I'm not one of you. Although, where's my friend Stuart?
Stuart Bill. Yeah.
Wait. You don't know us, but you're only friends with
Stuart.
Oh, no.
Ah,
Okay.
Wow.
coding buddy.
Now it's becoming clear.
I'll be going for the Australian.
Yeah.
You guys were, I used to say you guys were much more nerdy than me, but I can't actually say that.
No, you can't.
It's
No.
not true.
No, it's not true. So we're at a point where we can either continue, obviously, with the conversation, which has been outstanding, or we can throw in a few of these topics that Robert was so generous in throwing into a list that we have yet to even touch, because there was a couple of really good
This
articles,
is relatively normal.
which is relatively normal because it's kind of like, oh yeah, there's this list thing, we'll put it up on the website and leave it at that. But there was some really good articles to it. I don't know, Lily, it's up to you what would you like to talk about?
Let's throw in some articles. I'm good with that. There's
Okay.
some really great topics in there.
Hey, actually, can we talk about Hilton first, which I think ties into the revenue management thing because their third quarter performance, they've got their fourth quarter, guidance is down and that sort of thing. Very interesting when you look at the overall performance of their company in the U.S. That for the third quarter, they wound up occupancy was up just for the quarter 0.3%, and ADR was flat. So they basically RevPAR was up 0.4% based on rounding. When you look at the industry as a whole, those numbers are radically lagging the overall industry because at least from my stats for quarter to date, actually no, not on occupancy. I take that back. On occupancy, they were ahead. Hilton seems to have been taking, at least over the past 9 months, more of a push occupancy at the detriment of rate versus what they were doing last year, which was really more pushing rate and occupancy was lagging the industry. So I don't know if that's I haven't gotten deep enough into it.
It's very Oyo-esque in a way, though, because that's been the pushback for that, too.
It's really a direction. Yeah.
Well, Oyo's doing the same thing. I mean, in the sense that they're irritating the heck out of people because in their markets they're dropping rate during peak demand periods for occupancy
Right.
preference.
But
That's what you do when you're a new brand, when you're a new entrant to a market.
Right. But I mean by very Oyo-esque in that sense, yeah.
And Oyo doesn't have anybody below them, though. That's the
Hilton could be strategically doing this. There's big wars happening, and those big wars aren't just brands versus other OTA things like that. It's also brands versus brands.
Oh yeah.
And Hilton, if they really want to put some kinks in the armor of Marriott, one way to do that is to perform on the street better in overall key metrics. And I'm sure if you asked any hotel owner, holding occupancy and being flat on rate means year over year you're about the same. That is much better than having occupancy down and rate flat, or rate slightly up and occupancy down, because that means you actually, chances are you made less money. So it could be Hilton is taking an early shot at trying to win the brand war on the street.
And I believe so. And their shares are up 33% year to date, right?
Imagine that.
Yeah. Street seems to be rewarding them for it. But I think that's a very interesting point. And I didn't really see it earlier in their quarterly earnings, but boy, third quarter you start looking and go, I see a pattern here. So yeah, they've pivoted a little bit. So it's interesting. So I don't know if their direction to their revenue managers is being more of, okay, what do we do to push occupancy on this stuff and make sure that it goes, and yes, get the best rates you can, and certainly don't leave a ton of money on the table, but let's make sure we get this objective handled.
I'll tell you, I know the leaders of Hilton's revenue management practice. They're some of the sharpest, holistic revenue people I know. From a senior leadership